Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. My email is still tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is still your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, iceberg dead ahead, enough to sink the Titanic. This is the FP Journe Tourbillon Souverain in its tourbillon jewelry form, a high jewelry watch that is 40 millimeters in platinum. It includes an incredible 93 baguette gems on the bezel, lugs, and case flank, 201 brilliant cut diamonds set concentrically on the dial, and even 18 baguette gems on the buckle of the clasp. I haven't seen this much ice since the blizzard of '96. Now, taking a look in profile, you can see the watch is 10.2 millimeters thick. It's 48 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and it has a standard FP Journe 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, it wears like any 40 millimeter platinum tourbillon souverain. It's weighty because the case, dial, and movement are all precious metal, but it's not terribly large. You can see it will slide easily under a cuff. It's a flat watch with a sloped bezel. It's not hugely broad across the wrist, and I could say that if your wrist is as small as 14 centimeters circumference, you're going to be able to wear this. My wrist is 16. The strap, sort of golden brown, maybe we'll call it honey. It's gloss finished with irregular shape alligator leather, and you can see the irregular shaped scales characteristic of the cut for this strap. But on the bottom, as always on a Journe strap, we have small round scale alligator. The benefit of using gator on the bottom instead of the more common calfskin is that it creates a tougher, longer lasting strap. A few $100s more, but well worth it. Folded edge, monotone stitch, and you can see that this is in fact a Journe factory strap. It uses pull tab spring bars, so you can use your fingernail to pop the strap off the case. And because Journe aims for wearability, you can see that the lugs are drilled as close to the case as possible, so the pivot center of the strap will be far inboard of the end of the lug. As a result, it's shorter across your wrist, and due to the use of a curved spring bar, there's no impediment to the motion of the strap, so you can pull it straight down if you need to. The setting of the baguette gems on the case flank, lugs, and bezel, a work of art in its own right. This is incredibly sophisticated. As you can see the cuts, particularly in the downward angle of the lug. You see the profile where it rotates 90 degrees to the case band? Look at that fan-like array of faceted and immaculately cut and shaped diamonds. It is a true work of art. There's the cutting of the diamonds, that's an art in and of itself, and then there is the setting of the diamonds, a challenge in its own right. These diamonds all have special grading to ensure color, clarity, and carat are all as identical as possible, or I should say, as close to identical as possible, so that there's no gradient in size or clarity or color from gem to gem. Now, taking a look at the dial, it is made of white gold, and judging by the relative warmth of the crown, it may also be made of white gold. But the dial, white gold, likely with a little bit of rhodium coat to make it silvery white, featuring these spectacular 201 diamonds pre-cut. All the diamonds that go into this watch supposedly amount to over 23 carats. I should probably show you that clasp. Having mentioned the warmth of white gold, you can see it inside of the clasp structure, which is media blasted and polished. Now, white gold is the strongest gold mechanically, also stronger than platinum. So for this relatively thin mechanical part that has folding action and a tiny hinge, Journe chose to make the inside of the clasp out of that tough white gold, and you can see how it's a snapshot friction fit. But here's the thing, the buckle is definitely made of platinum. You can see on its underside PT 950, and you really get a good sense of the difference between the whiteness of platinum here and the relative warmth of white gold when you put them side by side. And externally, you can see all white with those gems inserted, and that is apparently by itself 0.95 carats on the buckle. Very special. If diamonds are a girl's best friend, then this is your entourage, because you've got plenty of friends. Frankly, though, this is more of a watch for guys, as the combination of mechanical watchmaking and horlogerie typically plays to that market. And I've known quite a few guys, especially down in South Florida, who rock this kind of style. And if you've got the panache, male or female, you're going to rock with this thing on your wrist, but you got to wear it straight up. No apologies. This is a watch for those who are not afraid to be brash. It's almost like going out on stage dressed as Kiss. It works if you're Kiss. If you're Paul Stanley, you can pull it off. Okay. Back to the facts. The dial's made of white gold, and you can see remontoir d'égalité avec 50 mots. That is actually on the reverse side. So you have this 1 second remontoir. So for 28 hours of the 42-hour manual wind power reserve, the barrel doesn't actually drive the escapement directly. It's this little linear titanium spring. Once a second, it releases its energy to the escapement, which means that you can see it's on the same axis as the deadbeat second, so as long as the deadbeat's running, you know the remontoir is functioning. And the constant force to the escapement allows the watchmaker to adjust the watch very precisely. Regularity is what you want before you start the adjustment of a watch that's consistently running one way, either fast or slow, and doesn't vary, especially through the torque curve of the mainspring. That is a watch with which you can work to create something exceptional. So other elements besides the constant force device include a free-sprung architecture with all the adjustments done using variable inertia bolts on the balance rim. Not only is this more shock resistant, but with patience, it allows for finer adjustment. And then there's an overcoil hairspring, a feature you'll see on the Tourbillon, the Chronomet Optimum, and a handful of very deluxe chronometer type watches from FP Journe. The overcoil with a very centered mass keeps consistent time in any position. And when I talk about this watch being a chronometer, I mean in general, if it has the word chronomet in its name or reverse operating power reserve indicator, you know that the watch is inspired by marine chronometers. So do you see how the power reserve is moving towards zero as I wind the watch? On chronomet style watches from FP Journe, it indicates zero when fully wound, that is 0 hours since a full winding. Because marine chronometers on ships needed to be wound at the exact same time each day, you needed to know when 24 hours had elapsed since the last winding, and then wind the system at exactly that time. So at 42, it drops dead. At 0, it's fully wound. Now you can see we have the dial side screws, which are a feature of FP Journe watches since its 1991 wristwatch prototype. And while controversial at first, it's become very influential in the watch industry since. Now we also have this black polished steel frame that frames the hours and minutes, the seconds, and then the tourbillon. Note the watch will run without the remontoir, but after 28 hours elapsed, it will turn into a scrolling seconds display to keep the watch running, albeit at subpar accuracy, so you want to make sure that you wind it every 28 hours. Just wind at the same time every day. The tourbillon carriage is filigree or wire-shaped, roughly profiled like a bell. It's beveled on its side and mirror polished or black polished on its top. Everything that's turning black as I tilt the watch is what's known as pali noir, a specular or mirrored finish that reflects light only in one direction. Very difficult to achieve. Tough on the flats, but brutally difficult on rounded surfaces like that half bridge for the tourbillon. You can see gold peeking through. That's because this caliber, 1403, is made of solid 18-karat rose gold, a rarity in watchmaking, but a feature of Journe watches since mid-2004. The watch features a case, dial, and movement, all made in-house by Journe, and it's 30 meters water-resistant. You can see that we have fine finish in the shape of stripes across the bridges. We have a mirrored anglage on the edge of the bridges, as well as on the edge of the steel components of the remontoir mechanism. We have solarization at the crown wheel core and the ratchet wheel, satination and polishing on the click and click spring, and then polished screws throughout. We have this remontoir system, which is premised on this linear titanium spring, so every second, for the first 28 hours of power reserve, the barrel does not drive the escapement. A nomenclature lesson, 1403. That means this 26 joule movement is 14 French lignes in diameter, multiplied by roughly 2.24 to get the millimeters. And then 03 is the year Journe started work on the movement. So the watch came out a year later in 2004. And in 2004, the Tourbillon Souverain won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or, effectively Best Picture at the Oscars of watchmaking. An impressive accolade, and one which Journe visited severally. This watch is extraordinary. Even by the standards of FP Journe, you will not see many of these leave the factory. If FP Journe does 900 watches a year, mechanical watches, not including the elegant, figure on probably no more than a dozen of these at the most. This is exclusivity incarnate. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. That is Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And by the way, don't slip on the ice.